Hey everyone, welcome to Gamble's Ramble, the channel that was formerly known as the Gamble Ramble. I got taken down from YouTube because I was a naughty boy. Anyway, I've digressed already, 19 seconds in. But welcome if you're new here. This is my channel where I talk about my over 40-year career in the music industry and interview some of my celebrity musician friends, successful musician friends, good musician friends, and talk about pop culture and music in general, books, movies. It's just a little outlet for me. As I said, the other channel was into monetization and successful, but this one's, basically just something I do for a hobby now. I've taken episodes from the Gamble Ramble and loaded them onto this page, Gamble's Ramble. So if you want to watch them, you can. But this is just something I do more or less for fun now. So it is Friday, April 3rd, 2026 today. Okay. Now, why is that an extraordinary date? Well, it is Good Friday of the Easter holiday weekend here in Canada. But above and beyond that, it is also the 30th anniversary of the release of the album Magic Incinerator by my former band, Buffalo Brothers. Now, Buffalo Brothers was a band I was very proud of. And if you follow my social media, or the Gamble Ramble channel at all previously, you know that I'm very proud of that band, and I discuss it quite a bit. I mean, it's certainly not the only band I've been in. I've been in far more successful bands. I played for the international recording band Helix for 7 years, for example, which has sold over 3 million records internationally. I have a gold single right there from my previous band, The Joys, which, and above that, a Helix gold record that was given to me honorarily. But the point being, out of all the bands that I've been in, the Buffalo Brothers was the one that you'll notice, if you follow me at all, that I discuss with the most pride. Because it is, in fact, the one I am most proud of and the one it's closest to my heart. And that's no disrespect to anyone I've ever played with. They've all meant the world to me. To be able to make music for a living for close to 4 decades, I was extremely lucky, and I appreciate every gig I've done, whether it's sitting in with a cover band for one night, filling in, or, touring for 4 years across Canada back and forth with the Joys, doing literally 325 shows a year, without exaggeration. So, as I said, other bands were more successful. I mean, the Buffalo Brothers record came out on this day in 1996. I'm very, very proud of that record to this day. I have a troubled relationship with the past of the band, but my overall and overriding emotion is pride. And, it's funny because look at the band The Joys, which I have that gold single for right there. We sold at least 4 times as many records. 4 times more records than the Buffalo Brothers ever did. And Helix, of course, sold that many more records than the Joys or anyone else I've ever played with has. But as I said, I'm very proud of that album to this day. I think it stands up. I know that Mike Bonnell, our keyboardist, he feels that production is very 90s, but I still think it sounds like a good rock record, By the way, you can get it. It is available on, all your streaming platforms. And I hope that you do give it a listen today. I'm going to after I film this. So I wanted to take a retrospective quick look. Now, it's around, what time is it? It's almost 7:30 on Good Friday evening. You know where I would rather be right now? I wish that we were in a club somewhere here in London, had just finished sound check with the Buffalo Brothers, and we're getting ready to have a celebration live show celebrating our 30th anniversary of the album. I wish that we were just handing over the stage right now to an opening act consisting of friends, which we always did. We always brought friends out to play with us. And that we would be, adjoining to the dressing room to maybe just tell stories and laugh about, the past and our memories and things like that. And then getting ready to play. Perfect opportunity too, by the way. The 30th anniversary landed on a Friday of a long weekend. We could have done a show, and it would have been a lot of friends that would come out, and it would have been a great night for everybody. And I'm really sad that we're at a place where that's not able to happen. And instead, it's not happening, as I said, because, there are people in the band aren't speaking to each other. There are people making false accusations. If you follow my channel, you'll know what I'm talking about. I went to it in depth and I'm not going to discuss it any further here, but, lies, allegations, and, people that aren't speaking to people. And if you know who I'm talking about, you know that lead singer Sean Sanders and I are presently kind of at loggerheads, but it's not just that. I mean, bassist Stan Fountain, who was a huge contributor to the record, which needs to be said because other people aren't saying it. He washed his hands of the entire thing. He doesn't even, I contact him about like business that would periodically come up, bad business, and I don't care, I don't want to hear about it. Like, he's washed his hands of the whole thing. And he's not happy with some of the members. Him and I are friends, and I won't elaborate on that. That's Stan's story to tell. And Mike Bennell seems to be, as always, the rock-solid figure in the middle, who everyone still gets along with, and he's always been a solid and more mature person than most of us. All of us, if I'm honest. And it's funny, I will say this, that I have a better relationship with Mike now than I've ever had, because I was a deeply insecure young adult, and Mike's a very intelligent guy, and he's got a very sarcastic, dry wit. And I didn't always understand him or want to understand him, especially back then, as I was so driven to want things to happen. If they didn't happen my way, I had a tendency to get very frustrated, and I would take it personally. It's something I've worked on over the years. But ironically, as I look back, I see my relationship with Mike has grown, and the qualities I didn't understand back then, I now actually understand, and they're the qualities I respect and admire about him, especially given the tensions between me and other people. Mike is Mike. He always has been. And he's always been open and honest about things. Topics I'm about to touch on that I feel were to the detriment of this band. But in Mike's defense, he was always honest about how he felt. Things like not liking touring and things like that. To Mike's immense adult credit, he was an adult through all of that. And he made it clear, this is something I'm not interested in doing, not prepared to do. Or he did it to an extent and then he had enough. And that's fair. Looking back on it, I salute him. He's a great human being. And I love all the guys, and Stan and I get along well. Sean and I, as I said, we aren't speaking. I don't like Sean, but I love him. I'm concerned about him, and I won't even approach that. He's got his side of the story to tell. But I have to say this. I mean, I don't have to, but I'm choosing to, so you can watch it if you want to, or you don't have to watch it. It's fine. But I'm very, very proud of that record. But I look back now, and we roll our eyes when we are younger, and people tell us, older people specifically say, hindsight's 20/20, right? You'll look back someday and understand. Well, you remember when you were a kid and your parents told you that? When you're older, you'll understand. You would roll your eyes like, you didn't want to hear it. That's true, right? And I look back now and I see things with crystal clear definition, including my own mistakes. So going back to the beginning of this thing, I've been given some credit over the years, and I don't need it necessarily credit in print or anything, but I don't think it's been fairly acknowledged that I was the engine that drove the business end of the band. I came up with the idea of getting a bunch of bands together, strength in numbers, to have a London showcase. I put it together, called The Office, called the London Calling Showcase. 4 of the 5 bands that night got some sort of deal. And I'll elaborate first of all. My idea was this. If we go to Toronto and showcase for record companies, we're not going to draw that many people. And, why wouldn't you want to showcase your strengths? Have the showcase here in London where we can sell it out. So that's what we did. I went to call the office and I asked for the venue for the night. I said, you can keep the doors, $5 cover charge, I remember. But we get free beer, like basically open bar, for all the A&R record company reps. I'm inviting management reps, this and that. That was the deal that we struck. Then I went down the street to the Sheraton Hotel in London, and I got a corporate rate code to give industry people. And I went to Via Rail, and I got a Via Rail discount code. And so what I did was I typed up a form letter and I sent it to all the record companies and called them, followed up with a call saying, my name is Archie Gamble. I am presently taking care of things. I'm not the manager, but I am the drummer for the band, the Buffalo Brothers. And I'm putting together a record company showcase with 4 other great bands. And we're inviting you down to see us in our natural habitat where we will shine. And you can get it was like, I think, $60 for a room, a really nice hotel room. You want to pay for your drinks. Even though people have expense accounts, I painted it as, take the train down to London, have a good night, you won't have to pay for a thing. And that's what happened. And all of the record companies in Canada that I approached, all the majors, Sony, Warner, Universal, which was MCA at the time, everybody, they all said yes, except for Virgin. Virgin was the only label that didn't come. And then, to cap it off, what had happened was, and again, I have to claim credit for this, we were shopping a finished record to these record companies. So what that means is that we have been recording demo after demo after demo, sending them to labels. I would send them to labels and get, either no response back or the letter saying thanks, but no thanks. So I finally sat the band down, and they will tell you this is true. I said, listen, I have a plan. We were playing fairly regular weekends by then. So let's go to Dan Broadbeck. Ask him to do a deal with us where we do a record, a spec deal, which is speculative time, right? Dan provides studio time and co-produces it with us. And then we shop it. Finished album with finished artwork and everything. Mastered, ready to go. To the highest bidder, to these labels to put out. And if no one puts it out, we will press it up on CD and we'll go out and play every weekend and sell it. And we'll pay off the album by gigging and by selling CDs. This was my baby, and the guys will admit this. I think even Sean will admit this. And if he doesn't, then he's wrong. And the guys said, great idea, Arch, make it happen. And I did. So after getting the record companies to agree to come to London to see this multi-band London Calling showcase, I said, I'm going to bring you our master of our album. I'm going to bring you full color copies of the artwork on glossy paper and a mastered, version of the record. So, well, just send it to us. And I said, no, I want to come and meet you, eyeball to eyeball, shake your hand, so you know who I am. And I gave the other bands the addresses of the record companies. I said, send me your demos. So, one day, our good friend Johnny Koshin, we took some money from a gig, and I paid him. I don't remember, I don't know if he volunteered to do it, if we paid him, but paid for his gas, certainly, and for his meals, took him out to lunch and dinner. And we went in the morning, first thing in the morning, and we went to every major label in Toronto. Went to some agencies, the agency and S.L. Feldman, went to a bunch of management companies, publishing companies, and I knocked on the door, told them I was coming. Can I see so-and-so for so-and-so here? Handed them the finished master of the record and the finished artwork. I said, please come to our showcase. And they did. As I said, every label invited and every company invited, except for Virgin, showed up. And 4 of the 5 bands got deals that night. So the bands were Mankind, which is Jim Helbin and Tim Hendry and the late Dan Fawcett, Cole Benjamin and Pete Mitchell, a damn good band. Face the Pain, which was, I had another name at the time, I forget they were called, but they ended up with a deal with MCA. Salmon Blaster, which ended up with a management deal that from that gig. And I can't remember who the other band was, but they got a publishing deal. And then, of course, we got our record and publishing deal from that gig. But my whole thing was by design. I wanted to take the stuff down there in person and hand it to them. So that night when they showed up, they knew who I was. I knew who they were. I handed them strings of drink tickets this long. I said, have a great time. And I made sure it started and finished early. And the night was a success. The place was packed. And as I said, 4 out of 5 bands ended up with deals. And I was very proud of myself. And, we weren't the kind of band to throw thank yous and compliments around. But Sean did say in an interview once that I was the go-getter in the band. So I'm assuming that's his way of saying thank you. You're welcome. I don't know. He's never said to me, hey, Arch, good idea, you know. But we weren't that kind of band anyway, so fair enough, right? It's not fair to point him out. But you'll see as the plot thickens, so. Now, one thing I have to say that goes back even further before all of us existed, we had some songs on some earlier demos that were very commercial radio type songs that I felt should have been on the record. Now, here's the thing with the band. A band is a democracy, and I got voted down, okay? We had a song called 18, a song called Limousine, and another one called Holy Water that I felt, if not all three, any of the three should have been on the record. They were radio songs, in my opinion. I said, no, music's changing, Arch, you don't get it. I remember someone saying that to me, but, grunge is king above it. I said, well, let's just be us. Okay, these were melodic hooky songs. Holy Water was a ballad. 18 was a slower-based country rock song. And Limousine was a stomper, a barn burner, great rock and roll song. I still believe that if we'd gotten the right takes of those songs, they would have fit on the record and could have gotten radio play. But I wasn't even allowed to show them. I was told, do not even play those demos for Attic once we signed the deal. So, fair enough. It was frustrating, to say the least. And in an aside, when the band broke up, Sean later signed a publishing deal with a small independent publisher in Nashville. She said, send me everything you've ever recorded. And he sent her all of our demos. Well, guess which 3 songs she picked? The 3 I wanted on the record. Holy Water, Limousine, 18. Does it feel good to be vindicated? Fuck no. I wish that I'd been vindicated at the time. Anyway, whatever. You probably watch this rolling your eyes. If you don't like it, turn it off. But I'm just telling you my side of the story because there is some frustration tied in with the pride. You understand? So the album came out, and then we did. It's a long, convoluted story. I won't even get into it. But we signed the record deal as Paleface and had Shop the Finished Album as the name of the band was Paleface. Once we signed with Attic, their lawyers got a cease and desist letter from Atlantic Records in New York City saying, we have an artist called Paleface, you need to change the name. But in the interim, we had signed, if you look at our record contract, which I've gotten in my filing cabinet here, it's Paleface. And we put out an EP, if you see there's a poster up here, that Attic paid for. So you gotta remember something, we did the showcase in 1994, and the album came out in 1996. And I'll never forget the night that we did the showcase, I left right after the gig. Literally put my drums in a van and I drove to Florida to do a cover gig for 10 days, a bike week in Daytona Beach. So I was talking to the record companies from the band house in Daytona. And 3 labels wanted us, or interested, Warner, A&M, and Attic. And also a management company, which was Bernie Breen, from the Management Trust, who managed the Tragically Hip. There's a space for one more band, and we showcased 6 times for them, and the other band was Big Wreck. So they went with Big Wreck, but they were almost our managers. Anyway, I'm throwing a lot at you, but if you're interested, stick with it. So Brian Potvin was the A&R guy from A&M Records, and he was really interested in the band. He was the guy that wrote and sang She Ain't Pretty by the Northern Pikes. And Warner took a flyer on us because they had recently signed a band called Wide Mouth Mason, who was also a bluesy rock band in the Black Crowes vein, like which we were. So they said, we've already got one of those. And they moved on. So fair enough. And in the end, Attic won. And they were the ones that put a check forward and said, here. So we signed with them. So part of the strategy was in 94, we put out, or early 95, a 4-song EP, which is called Paleface. That was supposed to be our subterfuge into the indie rock community. We put it out. Attic gave us, they printed it, paid for it, gave us 1,000 copies, free and clear, paid for a independent radio plugger to help us get some radio play on a publicist. They gave us $3,000 for merchandise. I said, go put out this indie album, because it was indie rock was and grunge was the thing around then, right? Credibility was important. So we did. We put out the Paleface EP, took 4 songs off the record. And, whatever. It was subterfuge, but it was how the industry worked back then. Moist. Capital EMI did the same thing with Moist when they signed them. They signed them on the strength of their independent album. Well, no, they didn't. They put out an EP that Capitol paid for. Same thing. That's where Attic got the game plan from. So we did some touring before the record came out with bands like Brother Kane and Seven Mary 3 and Poe and these different up-and-coming American bands. And that's the thing about being an assigned, regardless of what you think of Attic, it was the biggest independent label in North America until Roadrunner came along. It's certainly the biggest in Canada, and it had distribution by Universal. Well, it was MCA, which became Universal. So we were getting, you become a priority with your agency, you get offered tours that you don't get as an indie band. And we did Brother Kane, a short tour with Brother Kane. And then when the album came out, we did 6 weeks with the Four Horsemen across Canada. So in your record deal, you get something called tour support. Okay. Oh, and we also, by the way, put out a single called Stone Me and a video, which, Attic advanced us money for it. We got some money from Factor. But Attic put easily 6 figures into this record, and I can break it down for you. I have in another video. If you go through, you can see in my list of videos. But everybody really tried to push this record. And then what happened was you get something called tour support. It's in your record deal. It was written into the record deal as $10,000 that we were going to get to help support the tour, money to help you go on tour. Because when you're a brand new band, you don't make very much money. You get like $500 to $1,000 a night. And you got to pay for road crew and gas and hotel rooms. Once we hit our $10,000, they even extended us. We went into almost around $13,000. And they said, okay, guys, that's it. The next 2 singles didn't take off. The second one was, what's that song off the album I never liked? Nut. Anyway, we were trying to be something we weren't, which was a grunge band. And then the third single, Waiting Game, which was a great song that Sean Sanders wrote. Because we wrote 2 ways in our band. We wrote as a band together, or Sean brought stuff and we finished it. Hope that makes him happy that I've acknowledged that, which I always have, but anyway. So yeah, I'm throwing a lot at you, I know. And if you're stuck with me, stick around. So then we got, our agent was Jeff Crabe, who ironically had been our agent in the cover band days, but he was working his way up the industry. He was with SL Film and then the agency. He's now the head of the agency group International. He's the big cheese. He books stadium and arena tours. And I remember he called me and he offered us the Max Webster reunion tour across Canada. And I took it to the guys and I was so excited. And I took it to Attic, and Attic said, well, we'd rather see you out with a more current band, Our Lady Peace or Tea Party or something like that. Those bands were huge at the time and moist. And I talked to Jeff Crabe about this, and Jeff Crabe goes, Archie, you're not getting those tours, trust me. Take the Max Webster tour. It's all huge clubs, theaters, small arenas. And I went to the band, and the band took the side of the record company that we should say no. Said, well, their Attic's not going to support it. There's no more money. But Jeff Crabe had told me, look, there's enough money. I'll make sure you get enough that it pays for itself. And on your nights off, I'll put you headlining into small clubs for $1,000 a night. In other words, he said, here's the money. You'll make enough. Take this tour. Trust me. We're not going to break this band at radio. We're not going to break it at Much Music. We're going to break it live. And I got outvoted by the band. And of course, the record company didn't want to put any more money into it. Now, here's where I hold my biggest grudge. I will remove Mike from this because, as I said, Mike at least was honest in the beginning that he didn't like touring. And it was hard. He was the only one in the band with a fucking license. Poor guy, man. I can understand why he didn't trust other people to drive, so he couldn't sleep if the crew were driving. But Sean and Stan, I have no, to this day, it drives me crazy that they told me to turn these down, especially knowing that Stan loved Max Webster. I couldn't figure this out. And I was like, no, let's wait for one of the cooler bands, younger bands, to offer us. I said, Crabe's telling us we're not getting it. We're not getting those tours. So anyway, I got outvoted, and I was devastated. This was cross Canada from Newfoundland to Vancouver Island. I said, no. I told him the record company wants us to go out with someone a little more current. So then we got a call offering us the Cross Canada again tour with Sass Jordan. And Sass Jordan had a pretty big international hit with the song High Road Easy and a few other bluesy type rock songs and some ballads. At radio, she was very popular, and our sounds fitted. She was very Rolling Stones, Black Roses. So I said, okay, this is the one that we got to take. I took it to the band, and Jeff said the same thing. I'll get you enough per night to make it work. You can take a two-man crew and draw a small salary and everything, and I'll book you a nights off for $1,000. And the band said no. And I remember I was nearly in tears of frustration with the guys. Go, guys, please, we can't do this. We can't keep turning down these tours. I said, Archie, let's wait. It's not worth it. It's old people's music and whatever. At this point, Sean decided to step up and take a lot more interest in the business side of things, and he was very persuasive. Essentially, the band leader. And as I said, Mike's like, I'm not gonna do it. I don't want to tour, but at least he was an adult and honest. And Stan tended to, when Stan's watching this, nothing but respect, but Stan tended to back then to do what Sean wanted to do, And I was incredibly frustrated. And I called Jeff Craig back and I said, Jeff, I don't know how to tell you this, but the band said no to the Sass Jordan tour. And he goes, Archie, I'm going to stop calling. I'm sorry. And hung up. And I'm telling you this right now with my hand on my heart. I was in tears. I'll never forget it, sitting in my little apartment in Brantford. I was in tears of frustration. I was crying because I could see our career going down the toilet. I said, oh my God, what are we sitting here waiting for? When success isn't going to come to us, we have to go work for it. But because it's me telling the band, that's not going to listen. It's Archie the drummer, right? But I had learned enough about the industry to know how it worked. I'd gotten us this far. And please understand, we showcased for a ton of managers, at least half a dozen. Andy, that managed the Killer Dwarfs. Peter Carroll, that was Biff Naked's manager. As I said, Jake Gold and Bernie Breen from the Management Trust. I flew out to Vancouver to meet with some managers. I wanted to get us a real manager. Now, I believe that turning down these tours, that led the agency and Jeff Craig to wash his hands of us. The phone stopped ringing, except for the occasional local show opening for David Wilcox or whatever, No more tours were offered to us. It broke my heart. To this day, it still breaks my heart. And I believe that, and no disrespect to anyone at Anagon and me, but the wrong choice of singles kept us, we were trying to fit in the putting of that song. I'm sorry. There's two songs on the record that I didn't care for that I thought we were trying to sound like a grunge band. One of them was called Legacy and the other one was called Nut, and they were more alternative grunge sounding songs. It was the song Legacy that was the second single. I apologize. To me, they're two songs I skip on the CD when I play it. And we'll do so tonight. Anyway, we were trying to be something we weren't. And I don't think they were very convincing songs. So that was the other big chink in the armor, Looking back, I think we should have released the song Lion. I think it was one of the strongest rock songs in there. It had that grunge rock tuning and tempo. It would have worked. But see, again, hindsight's 2020. So at that point, people started turning down gigs and tours. And that's a story I could tell I won't, because again, it's something I'm picking on one person, but turning down radio interviews, turning down gigs. Eventually, people in the industry just stop calling you when you say no. And the album died on the vine at about 5,000 copies. And then Mike left shortly after that. And I stuck around for a while. We got Steve Georgakopoulos, great guitar player, friend of mine. We had a band called Buddy on the side. And Steve injected some new life into the band, but the writing sessions were we were trying to sound like Sonic and or Tonic and Fastball and these bands from that era. It just wasn't convincing. We became something we weren't. And eventually I left and I moved on to Helix. So you got to remember something. Here's something that's important, okay? We came out of the cover circuit with 6-7 days a week in one city, playing 3 sets a night, doing covers. But after that, I was playing when we came out of that circuit, I was doing one-nighter tours across Canada with Alive, the Kiss tribute band. It was my job. And also I had gone down to the United States with a great band called Tara Kane and done 2 tours of one-nighters in the South, in Georgia, North and South Carolina. In other words, I was the only one in the band with experience doing one-nighters. And I loved, one-nighter tours are hard work. You go across the country doing one night. You play, you get to a city, check at the hotel, try and get a couple hours sleep. You set up, play, show, tear down, get in the van, drive overnight to the next city, do it over and over again, times 25 in a month. It's hard work, and it's physically grueling, but I loved it. The other guys didn't like it. And as I said, at least Mike was honest about it. But I believe that was the reason people turned down tours. It was hard work. And they'd rather be big fish in London than put the work in and have a national, international career. And I stand by that to this day. Now, don't get me wrong, and I'm going to wrap this up. We're at 31 minutes. We should have had a manager, and I'm certain that I'm not sitting there saying, I did all this and I was always right. That's not true. A manager would have grabbed us by the lapels and said, you're going on that fucking Max Webster tour, and then you're going on the South Jordan tour. We're going to build you as a live act. But, here's me back then. And I was a pretty immature guy back then, too. Emotionally so, more so than anything. I don't think my words carry very much weight with the band. So, as much as they might have respected me they never told me, but as much as they might have respected me for taking us to the point of getting us a record deal, and handing each guy a $5,000 advance check, which I was very proud of doing. That's where it ended. I was like, okay, well, he doesn't know what he's doing. Well, I did know what I was doing because I was learning. You have to understand that every day I'm on the phone with the agency. I'm on the phone with the record company. I'm on the phone with the lawyer. I'm on the phone with management companies trying to set up showcases. I was learning how the industry worked. And the late, great Al Mayer of Attic Records took my hand on this. I remember him saying to me, he called me up to his office one day in Toronto. I took the train up from Brantford. He said, listen, we're going to help you find management. But till you do, you've brought it this far, you're the guy I'm going to deal with. And I remember one time he also told me to come to Toronto. He took me to a SoCan party and he introduced me around all these publishers and stuff. Like, he's just introducing me to industry people. And he's saying, here's who you should talk to. Here's who you should set up a live showcase for. Here's who you should avoid. Do this, don't do that. He was an extremely wise man. And the fact that he took some time to kind of engage my interest in the industry side meant the world to me. Rest in peace, Al. You were a diamond. You invested in our band, and it didn't work. But that's probably a good place to wrap it up. It didn't work. But I'm still extremely proud of the record. To this day, I'm very proud of it. I've got it right here. I have it on CD as well, but I have it on cassette. An unopened, sealed copy. It's the favorite thing I've ever worked on and worked with. And I love the guys. And as I said, Sean and I aren't speaking presently, but if he happens to be watching this, I love you fucking dope. But I don't like you right now, but I still love you. And I wish we were right now getting ready and pumping ourselves up for our 30th anniversary show. But we're not. And I have to accept that that's the reality of the situation. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this, because at the end of the day, despite what may sound like me pointing fingers and blaming people, I am to some degrees, and I'm also blaming myself for not being emotionally mature enough to maybe take the situation more in hand and be more firm. But one thing I will say, and I'll say till the end of my day, is that I'm extremely proud of the record we made. So thanks for tuning in, and if you want to, it's Friday night, rock and rollers, put on Magic Incinerator, crank it up. And if you were a fan of the band and are a fan of the band, think about the good times of the great live shows we had back in the day. And I thank you for taking 34 minutes and 33 seconds out of your life to listen to Gamble's Ramble. Have a good one.